So today we have a very special, and I can say that 10x times guest, a good friend and a colleague that I've learned so much about when it comes to workforce development and training and ensuring that people and communities have access to opportunities. Brother Bernard Ashcraft, who's the CEO of the Business Roundtable. Bernard, welcome to EdVenture.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, same here, man. Same here. So I wanted to get you on here, man, because I wanted to introduce you to the world. My audience is global, based on the data and based on the different places that I've been and had a chance to speak with different programs. And every time I even have these conversations with people, it always come down to someone who I know who's been doing this for a long time, creating the models between industry, partnerships and business and communities and government. And so I just wanted to have this conversation with you to first give you a salute, man, to the work, because I do consider you to be the godfather of this type of work. And so let me first just start off by um, wow, your background is so long, man. I may have to facilitate this because you could probably go on for the next 3 hours, man, with such a long background. So, what got you into the training and development space, and how would you describe the work that you've done for the last several years?
Well, my whole platform has always been social and economic justice, but also under that to have additional platforms like workforce development and business development. Um, and one of the weaknesses I discovered many years ago is DEI has always been very weak. Diversity, equity, inclusion
Yeah,
has rarely ever been there. And so, as a result of that, career development has always been a challenge for most people. Just having a decent job that will allow people to pay their house note, transportation, food, and education has
yeah,
always been a challenge in America because we're in a country where education for Black folks was against the law.
absolutely.
At one time, you have about 270 years of slavery where education for Black folks was outlawed. And so, uh, if you don't have an education, it's very difficult to access employment opportunities and career development. And yet, under all those circumstances during Jim Crow era, um, you had all of these Black people discovering so many things, and it was always never ever reported publicly. And I always think about those women down at NASA uh, who
Yeah,
who were just tremendous geniuses mathematically, and they were in a segregated room, and yet they still found a formula to help America get into space.
yeah,
And, but they were never really viewed or talked about until this last decade, actually. And so, because of those things, and also my personal experience growing up in a small town in the Midwest under Jim Crow, um, going to a segregated school, and having my grandmother was the lead head cook at the local college that we could not attend.
oh wow,
And so I think all of those things have probably caused me to take a real stand in social and economic justice. And when I was 12 years old, I used to shine shoes on Saturdays in a white barber shop. And so uh, one Saturday, I heard the N word several times. And I looked straight ahead. I was sitting on a shoe shine stand, and I acted as if though I didn't hear nothing. And I remember it was two white barbers or three white barbers, and the owner I could see him looking over his reading glasses at me, looking for a reaction. I gave no reaction. And I got home. I told my grandmother, and she put her hands on her hip and she said, "Okay, okay. First of all, did they pay you?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Okay, you're there to make money for a little spending change that we don't have." She said, "But all these things are going to change, and you need to be a part of the change." And she said, "Look at that good book over there on the table, talking about the Bible."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
she
yeah.
said, "It's all in the Bible. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And I want you to be a part of this change." Well, at age 12, I wasn't sure what that meant. Uh, I was just interested in taking that little money I made and having a good time. So years went by, and Emmett Till was killed in Money, Mississippi. And these two women who were good friends of my mother came up the street screaming, "We need to fight. We need to stop this." And the first thing that came on my mind was Emmett Till. I'm the same age as he is.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's
yeah.
when I started thinking about what my grandmother said in terms of bringing about change. And so I just began to evolve and to work toward change over the years. And I chose this platform of social and economic justice to do what I could. So it's been an interesting ride.
Well, it's been a great ride, and I know that, like I said, you have a long resume, but we know that you spent and served your country down. Which branch was it?
I was in the Navy.
You're in the Navy,
Yes,
and then you were in San Diego and made yourself up to the Bay Area, where you actually end up getting into politics and
yes,
became chief of staff and a range of other things. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping over your resume because I really want to make sure that we get to the core
yes.
of this work, that my audience would really see you as kind of the godfather of this. But what I hear you saying, and what I think it's important, is that your lived experience drove you to really make this foundational when it comes to how you wanted to impact. And part of that was politics, part of it was working with community to create job opportunities. So, how did that all kind of come full circle for you as you ended up developing a regional training center at some point?
Yeah. Well, when I got discharged from the Navy, and while about 6 months, 7 months before I got discharged, I was locked up for a couple of weeks for leading a demonstration on the base. And
Got it.
the captain of the base called me to his office to talk about what I was concerned about.
Mhm.
And I had a long talk with him, and he wanted to uh, refer me for an officer's training program. And
Mm,
he said that he thought I could do a lot more as an officer than enlisted man. And
mhm.
I said, "No, I just want to get out of this Navy. And if you could want to do me a favor, cut about 3 or 4 months off of my enlistment." And he said, "Well, yeah, I can do that, but I want you to think about becoming an officer." So I got out a few months early, and well, actually got discharged at Treasure Island up here in the Bay Area.
Mhm.
And
Oh, I
when
see.
I got
Yeah.
discharged, I stayed at a hotel for 5 days uh, because I couldn't decide on where I wanted to go. I wanted to go back to San Diego where I had a family I had adopted, very close friends, and I had this very, very wonderful, beautiful lady in Vancouver, Canada. I'm trying to decide if I want to go to
Of
Canada
course.
or to San Diego. And so I called my play sister in San Diego, and she said, "Look, come on back down here, stay with us, and make a decision in a couple of months on what you want to do." At that time, I was a clinical laboratory technician. I had been
Mm,
trained, but I had been offered a job in Vancouver, Canada. And
mm,
so I thought, okay, I have a job waiting on me in Canada. I got this beautiful woman in Canada, but there's something about San Diego that I think I probably should go. And so I finally, after 5 days, I went down to San Diego. And 1 week later, I applied for a job as a laboratory technician or medical center and was hired immediately on the spot.
Mm.
And so after about a month, I found my own place, found an apartment. And talking to the people that I work with, I told them that I was going to organize an organization and I needed them to introduce me to their friends and people who might have an interest because there was a lot going on in 1968. There was so much going on
Hmm.
in across the country.
Yeah.
And so um, I started putting together the Black Action Committee. Started off with 7 people, and we start putting out programs for jobs, looking for jobs for Black people,
Mm.
making sure kids had food and breakfast in the mornings and good education. And that's how really I got started.
And so I want to I want to move you up to the Bay Area and really kind of focus
Yes,
in on some of these training programs that you started,
yes,
really using, you know, that combination of business and politics and connections to the institutions. So you ended up starting this regional training center. I just want to focus in on, if we can, just a couple of the programs that when you came up to the Bay Area that you actually started where you were able to bring all of these different people together. Because I remember biotech and a couple of other things. So, and as even as dean up in Merritt, which, you know, by the way, you helped me kind of get into the Peralta system early on. Um, yeah, so let's and let's move up into your recent um, training, which is really fascinating what you've
yes.
done there.
Well, first, let me say that I didn't plan to move to the Bay Area. It
Uh huh.
happened without me planning. I came up for a few days of rest and recreation and to meet with Bobby Seale about some stuff. And
Mm,
I had a very close friend who was in the Army, Ezel Ware, who became a general,
mm-hmm,
who was a close friend of mine. So he wanted to introduce me to Elihu Harris because he's going to be running for mayor of Oakland. And he wanted us to have a fundraiser. So Elihu calls me up and says, Bernard, I have a friend whose campaign manager just quit, and why don't you meet with her? So I met with her, and I did not plan to do it. I did not want to work for her. I planned to go back down to San Diego and keep doing what I'm doing. And so I was being very crazy. After the conversation, she said, well, what will it take to bring you on board? So I
mm-hmm.
said $10,000 and $5,000 a month because I was being flippant. And she
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
looked at me and said, okay. And when she said, okay, I said, oh my God, I got to do this. So I became her campaign manager and then her chief of staff.
Mhm,
And it was then, shortly a year or so later, I opened up the training center, the Regional
mm,
Technical Training Center. And I said, look, hey, we got to do something very different.
uh-huh.
We've got to work with industry, education, government, and community.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
by
yeah.
doing that, I got really, really good responses from AT&T,
Mhm.
Comcast, Novartis,
Yep.
all the
Yeah, yeah,
biotech
yeah.
companies. And man, let me tell you,
Mhm.
it took off. And so
Gotcha.
I said everything we do has to have those 4 components. And so
Mhm,
when Ken Baker from our Rhythm Technologies called me up, I did not plan to do any more training.
mhm,
And Ken Baker said, man, this is an opportunity that we have never had before. And so, wow, we sat down and talked about it. We designed a program. And I said, well, maybe we can find an existing medical assistant program and put this in there with EKG training and so forth. So I
mhm.
went up to Merritt College. Let me
Gotcha.
tell you, it was challenging.
Yeah, yeah, of
And
course.
I have to tell you that I have never met the type of dean since you left. When you
Oh,
were the
wow.
dean at Merritt College,
Hmm.
you opened the door to make things happen. And so that was one of our challenges, not having a dean like you. And
Ah,
so, but we were finally able to get the program going, and it's just been tremendously well.
okay. One of the challenges you have to deal with is really the administration part, and that's the part that I really have always appreciated about your skills and abilities to navigate through these things. And this is important because I think a lot of our listeners here, one of the things that their challenges is actually how do they deploy programs through all of the bureaucracy that actually gets in the way. And a lot of times they don't feel comfortable with dealing with outside educational enterprises because for whatever reason, whether it feels like a threat or whether they just don't know how it fits into how they've been taught to think about educational delivery, whatever it is. And that's something that I've always admired about you. So what's kind of been your strategy when you've kind of deployed those approaches?
Well, one of the problems that we always have is sometimes people who have jobs in civil service type of operations like education, uh, they really don't have a plan to do anything more than what they have been assigned to. And
Yeah.
it's very difficult for them to add anything to their portfolio, no matter how much the demand is.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
trying to get civil work, right, get civil workers into anything has always been difficult. We
Yeah.
had to fight like hell with the dean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
finally met with the president of Merritt College, and we said, "Look, we got this program that's in demand, and the community wants it, and we got the community behind us, and we got it off the ground." And so uh, the first struggle was with the education. We had the corporate part,
Yeah.
we had the industry part. We needed education to play a role, and the community wanted it. So we made presentations throughout the community, and once the community got behind us, we were able to launch this program. And I
Hmm.
had several major elected officials to speak as a kickoff. And
Okay.
once we had the kickoff, it really took off after that. Yes.
So so you get business and industry around the table. What are the incentives, or how do you attract the business side to the table? Because other institutions really struggle with that, but you seem to have a knack at getting them around to the around the table.
Yeah. Well, business wants well-trained people.
Yeah.
They want talent. And so their thing is, what is the model can you structure to show us the talent?
Hmm.
And so um, we came up with an outline that the industry agreed to, the type of training that they had met all their requirements. And then again, our fight was with education, but once we got
Hmm.
it rolling, it worked out real well.
Hmm.
The biggest challenge we had is most people were just not aware of this type of a career opportunity.
Right.
I mean, cardiac monitor technicians, what is that? And
Right. Right.
to give you an example, um, our rhythm technologies have a little device that they put on a person the size of a small napkin or some other little, it's about 2 inches long.
Hmm.
And from that, they can measure so much data on your body and your heart. And that gets translated out into a database. And you work with a doctor to do diagnosis and so forth.
So I want to pick up where you started, where you were talking about we were talking about what it means to work with the colleges and kind of the unique role that you found yourself in terms of being an outsider, outside educational enterprise that plays a vital role. Because what I find is that a lot of the colleges have a very difficult time with reaching out to industry and community partners to put together kind of that trifecta there. What has been your approach to that?
Yeah, we try to make sure we have a strong industry partner.
Yep.
And then we work with the community and have the community and industry to demand this new way to work together and to develop collaborative partnerships. We actually signed an MOU with our Rhythm Technologies, and we gave that to Barella College District. Said, look, we got this company that really wants to get people into good careers, good pay. And this just happens to be a career where
Yeah.
you can make anywhere from $25 to $35 an hour to start, plus a $5,000 sign-on bonus. And then 2, 3 weeks ago, I hooked up with Chase Bank to come in and start doing financial literacy. And
Mm.
my thing was, okay, if you're going to start a career, and you're already unemployed, you probably got bills to pay, you probably are underwater financially. So you need to understand how the financial networks operate. And so we got Chase to be able to come in and provide financial literacy so people can know more than just applying for a credit card,
Sure,
know
sure.
how the financial institutions work, but also how to manage their money. And there was an article in Sunday's Chronicle about the need to have financial literacy
Hmm.
taught in high schools and starting in a couple of years. So we're already ahead of them. And so once you got industry and the community, you can really go into education and explain the benefit, not just for the applicant, but for the college district as well.
Hmm.
It's a win-win for the college district because most adults who are in community colleges are really trying to find a good job, and that's what they're there for.
So how do you end up? So because you are connected and you've had this trifecta relationship, and I've always been really impressed with how you're able to talk with business, talk to politicals, and then go into the community and really grab people for opportunities there. What's your how do you end up establishing these connections with the community to create that pipeline?
Yeah, I had to explain to people about this new way forward, this new type of career opportunity. And when you say cardiac monitor technicians, the first reaction most people get is, "Oh my God, I don't think I'm qualified." And
Yeah.
my whole thing is, wait a minute, we will teach you medical terminology. You will be enrolled in medical assistant class that already exists, but
Hmm.
it will also include EKG and all of the talent that the company needs for you to have. And so once you break it down to people, they find out that, oh, okay, I can do that. And you know what's interesting? A lot of young people of color have already enrolled in medical assistant programs.
Mm, that's
But they
right.
enroll
That's
in
right.
those programs because they feel that's an easy access to a job of
Absolutely.
doing more and less janitorial type work
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
cleanup work. Then they
Hmm.
find out, oh, if I graduate from medical assistant and I learn EKG and I'm going to be trained, once you get employed, you go through 3 months of hands-on training with a partner from the company. They
Hmm.
don't just
Hmm.
let you go. You spend the first 3 months being tutored on how to do it. And so once they find that out, and more importantly, when they hear directly from the industry representative, it makes them a lot more comfortable.
So
But
what do you
you know,
do? So
it's
do you
unfortunate, but so many people, young and old, don't feel that they are qualified. And so you got to first have them to change their attitude and look at what they can do. Yeah, and you need an instructor who is 100% on board,
yeah.
who's also every day encouraging them uh, and letting them know that they're okay. And I learned many years ago, working with AT&T. Remember, there was a time when AT&T would give you a test. You have to pass a test in
Right.
order to go to the next step. And so what we do is because we want you to get certified by the state. So we have practice tests. And
Mm.
so make sure that people feel comfortable taking the test, but also they learn how to research the company. Now, let me give you a real quick idea of some things that have happened, and it's really interesting how it turned out. When we were doing a lot of work with Novartis and Bayer and Genentech, I always remember making sure that people research the company, know everything there is about the company,
Hmm.
and practice interviewing if you have to. Most people get interviewed nowadays by two or three people at the same time. And so, one of the questions that they tend to always ask people is, well, what are your weaknesses? What's your weak part of your portfolio? And people get extremely nervous. They don't want to say something that might knock them out of the job.
It
So
makes sense.
I found a very easy way to handle it. I said, you tell them that your weakness is chocolate, but you're doing better and you're down now to only 2 Hershey bars a week. And every time they say that, the interviewers crack up, start laughing, and they see a different side of your personality, and they see that you're a fun person to work on a team, and it makes everybody more relaxed.
I
Okay.
love that, and I'm sure that it also creates this
Yes,
level
yes, yes.
of
And in
comfort.
fact, I will never forget a person I referred to Novartis over in Emeryville, and we talked about how you do research. He researched the company, everything, the current projects they're working on, their stock market proceedings, everything. Bayer offered him a job, but he didn't want to work for Bayer. He only wanted
Mm.
to work for Novartis. He did all this research. So he goes over for the interview. After the interview, they called me up and said, Bernard, can you send me two more people like Jose? They said, this guy actually interviewed us. He knew more about this company than we do, and we work here.
Well, see, so you bring up another deal too, Bernard, man. I mean, you're dropping so many nuggets, man. This is why I wanted to have this conversation because you know you've just switched to talking about another really successful program in which you were able to get several different biotech companies like Novartis and Bayer on board to partner with you and therefore partner with the colleges. Um, as we know, when it comes to science and things like this, you know, often people, especially from underserved communities, they're walking around in their head like, hey, I can't do math, I can't do science. But these opportunities were right in front of you. How did you get them to embrace like real scientific methods that they would have to learn? And how did you get the employers to believe that these folks from underserved communities had the capacity to do this?
Yes. Well, I tell all the classes that I was the best C student any teacher ever had. And um, also, we had a president called Bush who was a C student and became president. And so it's a matter of believing in what you can do. If you can believe it, then you can do it. You have to believe in yourself. I remember one time the guy at Novartis, when I did a curriculum and presented them a curriculum that we were going to use, they didn't know at the time that I had worked at UC San Diego in the
Mm.
biology department. And so when I gave them this proposed curriculum, they looked at me and like, wow, this is perfect. This is exactly what we need. And then the guy says, now, Bernard, there's one other little thing that I'm interested in. And I could tell he was nervous in talking about it. He said, what about soft skills? And
Mm.
I said, look at item 19 on that page. It says EIS, Employment Integrity Skills.
Yeah,
We don't call it soft skills because that's a put down. They use soft skills as a term
that's a
against
really good
certain
point.
communities.
Yep.
And so I said, Employment integrity teaches you about the value of the job, your own personal value, how to be to work on time, how to work in teams, and just how to be a good team player. And he said, "Oh," he let out a big deep breath. He said, "Oh, okay, okay." I said, "So I don't call it soft skills because that's somewhat of a put down.
Yeah,
Employment integrity skills is where we go, and that always works." And being able to really research the company. If you don't
absolutely.
research the company, you are not going to be prepared for an interview. Yes.
So let's look at that other leg of the stool here, and that is the politics involved with it. So you've always been a very savvy political operator in that you've created these great relationships with a lot of political figures that are key leaders, in the region there. What's the purpose of really creating those type of relationships and maintaining those? How does that help you in doing this great work? How do you get them on board
Oh, yes.
with the work that you're doing?
Having a strong political portfolio always helps. And I've always been very, very politically involved, having been a campaign manager in several different races. In fact, this morning I got an email from former Congressman Jim Bates in San Diego because I was his last campaign manager.
Mm.
I built relationships, and having worked at the Oakland City Council staff for almost 4 years, I make sure that I meet with and look at the support of elected officials and try to make sure they understand that if we are successful, then they will be successful. And of course, I have, you know, worked in many campaigns, and so I make it clear about the advantages they have, and also what the negatives can be if they do not support it.
Mhm.
I tell if they're not a supporter and a champion of workforce development, I make damn sure their constituency know about that.
See
And
that,
so
that,
it's
that that's
important for them to be really interested in helping their clients and their constituents to get good, well-paying jobs.
I think that's what I've really always appreciated about how you've done your work, and that how you end up framing the situation. So what I took from that was, and I've seen this where the politicals, they have an opportunity to actually make some of the work that you're doing, which is always on the leading edge, part of their platform. It's something that they can actually go out and speak to if they're having that level of support. But then I hear this the political activist, the old panther in you that you talked to about earlier, that knows how to put pressure on the system when they're not really looking at the opportunities on behalf of their community in these underserved communities. And so I've always appreciated, that level of a push, and that you've been able to deploy, and that's been a real key part of your work there. And so, you know, maybe we should talk about one more program you did, because I know you did some work with PG&E, one of our energy companies, a long time ago. Not that long, but yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, we started the first so-called green jobs training program
Yeah.
in the Bay
Yeah.
Area in 2008. And we had this big kickoff at Merritt College, but I got PG&E to build out a classroom for our green jobs. Then I went to Solar City and got them to come on board because they were going to be needing solar installers. And so we worked together with them and with Berkeley National Laboratories. In 2008, nobody knew what the hell a green job was in 2008.
Right.
I got most of my information from Berkeley National Laboratory and from a group in Canada. And so I remember a person at the Oakland Chamber of Commerce in a workshop we had. I made this presentation about green jobs. The room was quiet. Nobody knew what the hell I was talking about. And once we got at lunch, I was able to get Gavin Newsom uh, and the mayor of Oakland, um, who was at Phil Orgosa from Los Angeles, Sharon Quirk from Fullerton, Ron Dellums. They all came up to the kickoff at Merritt College. And of course, that made big news. And
Yep.
that was the first time that I had met in person Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom said, Bernard, this is a great program. How is it funded? And I looked at him and I said, man, let me tell you something I learned from my grandmother. You find a way when you poor, you make a way out of no way. If I waited on y'all to fund it, you wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have a program. And he said, you mean you doing this without funding? I said, look, I got PG&E here. I got Solar City here. We on the campus of Merritt College. We got all these students we've recruited. And if I waited on y'all to fund me, they wouldn't be here. Ron Dellums didn't want to be upstaged. So he points to me, leans across Gavin Newsom and says, Bernard, I'm going to get you some money. Still waiting. And
So,
we got the
Bernard,
program off the ground. And so many people started getting jobs. And man, I'm going to tell you, we had to really run a lot of classes for the green jobs training, but that's what we had to
I
do
remember that. Yeah.
politically to make people understand the value, make it value added. And you might remember because you came to several of the Bay Area Business Roundtable meetings, and we gave out spotlight awards,
Yep.
and we
Yep.
always invited elected officials to speak. And when they walk into the room, and they, they, they really start off thinking, well, this is only going to be a few minutes. They walk into the room and they see standing room only. And it's like, oh my God,
They
who
want
is
to be a
this
part
guy?
of it.
Who's this crazy dude?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you give them a big plaque or a spotlight award, and now they want to work with you.
Right, right, right. No, I mean, this is what I remember, and these are the lessons that I've learned from you, man, from the time that we've met, man, and just being able to observe, and also then be put in a position where we could partner. And I've always felt like, even when I was a dean, and with all these different groups out here, that's hard to figure out who's real and who's not real. I've always felt like, hey, look, there's one person that I know that I can put some W's on the board with, man. And that was you. That's why when we were doing, the work up at Merritt, I'm like, hey, I just told everyone, whatever he needs, wherever he wants to set up, let's do it. And that's been my approach. It's really when I look at partners. So I want to end this, Bernard, by really, like I said, you have such a long history of doing this work, and you have the wisdom, you have the lessons, you have the strategies. As we kind of show up in today's world, 2024, with everything that's going on, with technologies booming and things moving forward, what's your outlook, and what are some of your recommendations on how we should continuing kind of extending your legacy of bringing all of these different stakeholders to give jobs to people who wouldn't necessarily be in the pipeline?
I hope that we can provide an example of how you can work in collaboration with industry, education, and government and community, and to build community support and not give up no matter what people might say. There's going to always be a demand from industry for these new jobs of the future. And that's going to continue. Now, 2 years ago, we never heard the word AI.
Yep.
And now everybody's trying to jump on, trying to figure out what it is. Well, that is the future. So the future would suggest that we stay alert and look at this change in technology and how to best work in collaboration with all the four categories of industries to make it happen. And I just hope we can pass uh, that strategy along to people.
Right on, man. So
And also,
yeah, go
in my
for
next life, I hope I can grow up to be like you.
it.
I want to travel all over the world.
Well, hey man, you know that it's a mutual admiration society, man. Like I said, when I think of my time in when I think of my time in Oakland and just how we connected, man, like that kind of set the stage for me, especially at a time when there were reasons for me to feel down on the work just because Oakland is a very complex place. And part of that is that with all these different agendas, which you find in most places that you go, but I always felt like our focus was always on making sure that people in the community could see where opportunities were and to
Yes.
design for that. And so, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, and I been thinking about them. I'm like, look, you are the godfather of this work, man, and I want the world to actually know that, you know?
Well, thank you so much, and I want to thank you for providing me with this platform to get the word out. That's really
Absolutely.
helpful.